All right, thank you so much for staying with us here on Morning Live. Now, as we draw to a close of Human Rights Month, we continue with our theme of gender-based violence during Human Rights Month. Health E-News looked at the long-term impacts of malnutrition and, of course, its effect on both hunger and violence. Let's take a look at this insert.
This is Diepsloot, one of the most violent communities in South Africa. Shepherd Lamini is a resident here and is not proud of his past.
I don't mind even to drink from yesterday up to now. I'll be sitting here drinking, not remembering that the kids, they need food, they need clothing, they need money, all that stuff. As long as I'm satisfying my needs, I'm fine. Then from there, I'll go out and violate other people. You know, to violate a person who's defenseless, really is quite embarrassing.
Fights with his wife were a regular occurrence.
I did not mind even to take a full bottle of beer and throw it to my wife. Imagine if I hit you the head with that bottle. You know, something that can happen. Maybe I may hit him and then he dies there because I don't know what I'm doing.
Poverty emasculates men, says Mzwakhe, a lead researcher from Sonke Gender Justice Project. He interviewed 2,500 men in Diepsloot for a recent study on gender-based violence. The study found having food reduced the odds of violence by men by 40%.
Men feeling that their masculinity is basically reduced to nothing because then they are not able to meet the immediate expectations of providing for themselves but also for their families, and it's also a pathway to basically drinking. Men do a lot of beer binging in a way of trying to move away from thinking about the fact that they can't meet these expectations of providing.
Because as a man, I have to be a provider as the head of my family. So I have to be a provider and do everything that they need. And sometimes I feel, you know, undermined by the other people if I can see that the other person maybe is working, is providing his children with all the necessities. Then, but if I'm just coming here with an empty-handed, or they are going to school with the empty stomach, you know, that thing, it gives me more pressure.
Tracy Ledger, a food security expert, believes hunger is one of the major triggers for violence in South African society.
Early childhood malnutrition, severe early childhood malnutrition, permanently damages the brain's impulse control. And that makes you much more predisposed to becoming a permanently violent adult. The other way in which children become violent is if they grow up in violent households, if they are constantly exposed to violence.
South Africans' poor access to healthy foods threatens equality across the country.
Nobody stands to benefit in a country where our public health burden is going to collapse because of the effects of malnutrition, where our education system, despite all the money that we could throw at it, is not going to be able to educate a significant number of children because they just cannot learn in school, and where our society is not going to get less violent, it's going to get more and more violent because more and more people are going hungry every year.
Since his days of violence and drinking, Shepherd has turned his life around. He now works with the Community Policing Forum and is seen as a community leader fighting for peace, a protector of the weak.
I like the children, but mine are not here just because of their father who was violent. But they like me. They also know that he stopped drinking. They know that he stopped drinking now. He's a real father. He's a responsible father. Every month I must make sure that the cent that I get, I must share with the kids. I must drive my own. But for the kids, make sure they are covered. Not to entertain anyone before my children. My children comes first, and then the second is my wife. I'm the last child.
For many others in Diepsloot and poor communities, hunger remains a daily battle.
People who vote, communities, are at the bottom of the food chain. And that really does create frustration. That really does create tension. That is why when somebody steals, even if they steal just a loaf of bread, and that communities react to that in the most extreme and aggressive violence, that sometimes become mob justice. People are necklaced and banned because people have been failed by their own democratic government, and that we shouldn't be even talking that there are families who live below 4 rand, 10 rand a day. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't augur well with the constitution of this country that's supposed to promote human rights and human dignity.
All right, many thanks to Health E-News for that insert. We'll continue with our discussion on gender-based violence with people opposing women abuse. That's Paul after this short break. Stay tuned.